Hi everyone, welcome to a new SenseAbility newsletter. Today's subject is around taking the method further, and my guest Alan Questel is here to help us understand what the training process is for the Feldenkrais method, what it entails, and what you're going to get as a result of doing a 4-year Feldenkrais training. So welcome in, Alan. Thanks for
Thank-
coming on the podcast.
Thanks very much for having me, Joe.
Perhaps initially you could explain to people your background as a Feldenkrais practitioner as it pertains to trainings themselves.
Sure. Okay, so I was in the Amherst training, which was the last training that Moshe did. And I was very fortunate when I started my practice. I quit all the other work I'd been doing for years as an actor and a contractor. And I started a practice, and within a year and a half, I had a waiting list. And I had about 80 people a week in classes, and it just took off. And I have to be honest that I was very successful, but honestly, I didn't understand much of what I was doing, but I kept doing it. And then after 3 years of full practice, I became an assistant trainer. So that was about what, 1986 or so.
Hmm.
And that was my first participation in trainings. And again, I was fortunate to teach in a lot of trainings worldwide. And then in 1994, I became a trainer. And I actually became a trainer later than some of my colleagues, even though I qualified, because I didn't feel quite ready for it. And I
Hmm.
think if we're going to talk about training programs, that's one of the things that we probably need to discuss is the internal feeling of, can I do this? And how do I do it? So I became a trainer in 94, and then some years later, I started directing trainings, and I've had a number of trainings in Australia, Sweden, South America, the United States, well, probably about 20. Right now, I have one in France, one in Belgium, one in Santa Fe, and one in Taiwan. So I keep pretty busy
Wow.
doing it, and I
Yeah.
still like doing it and enjoy doing it. Yeah, yeah,
That's that. So you've got all of those trainings currently active?
yeah, yeah. And that's my limit, 4.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
So
a
I
lot.
mean, and how many students do you have on each of those trainings?
Probably a little over 150 altogether.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. And just so everyone's aware, it's a 4-year training process. So those individuals that are on that training, you're kind of tracking those individuals through a 4-year process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You mentioned there that when you, the reason that you became a trainer a little later than some of your colleagues
Mm,
was to do with this feeling of readiness you mentioned. Could
yeah.
you maybe just kind of go into that as like what you felt perhaps was missing as you studied the method or as you discovered in yourself you,
Hmm.
around the knowledge of the Feldenkrais method?
Sure.
Perhaps that gives the people an idea about, the training process and what's available to them and how that will kind of guide their learning towards feeling ready to be a practitioner.
Well, there's kind of two things there. One is my personal readiness, and I'll
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that, and then I'll talk into about the readiness for someone to become a practitioner. So
Mm.
my personal readiness, as I described, I was very successful as a practitioner, and then I became an assistant trainer.
Yeah.
And it's like I went from being a really successful practitioner to all of a sudden being at the bottom of the barrel again as a new assistant trainer.
Right.
And it was really daunting because I'd be giving a functional integration lesson in class with maybe 20 people watching, and every movement I did, I
Yeah.
was like, why am I doing this? I don't know. I can't explain it. What if they ask? I don't know. What if I, and my mind was just going crazy, and the
Right.
lessons always worked well. And then after some years as an assistant trainer, I
Mm.
felt quite successful at that, and I could talk about things. And then I became a trainer.
Yeah.
And it was that same process. All of a sudden, I sunk down to this feeling of not knowing enough and can I do this? And I would say, honestly, it took me about 3 years of practice of teaching a lot as a
Yeah.
trainer
Yeah.
to feel like I did that. And the same thing with an educational director. And
Yeah.
I'm describing this process because I think this is a normal, typical process that most of us go through
Yeah.
when we take that step to actually do what we've been studying.
Mm.
If I put it more into the context of a training program,
Mhm.
in 1999, I was having lunch with a colleague, Carl Ginsberg, and he's passed away now.
Mhm.
And we were talking about trainings, and he was saying trainings aren't good enough. That's crazy. Trainings are better than they've ever been. We can articulate the work better. There's more material. The students come in with more experience. Overall, all trainings are better. And he said, but people aren't confident. And I said, oh, that's a different question.
Mhm.
I started investigating that, and I started to realize that becoming competent isn't necessarily the same thing as becoming confident. And so I started thinking, well, how can I help people have a greater level of confidence to practice this work? Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about someone not just studying in a training, but going out and being able to practice it.
Yeah.
And of course, the most significant thing in that whole process is practice, meaning during the training, going out and practicing.
Mm.
What I found was in awareness to movement, people feel a little bit more secure teaching that because there's a structure to it.
Yeah.
So they get hold of a lesson and it's written out or recorded, and they can go and teach that regardless of how much they understand it or not, and
Mm.
watch the variety of experiences that people come back with.
Yeah.
But confidence is harder.
Mm.
And so I did something that thank goodness it worked because I stopped teaching functional integration as I normally had. What I had normally done was demonstrated something and people would copy that. And I still do that, and many other trainers do that too.
Yeah.
But the default in that, when someone is imitating something, they're always thinking, am I doing it right? And they're working off this correct idea that they saw someone with much more experience do, and how do I do that? And it's a bit daunting, and it discourages people very often from practicing.
Right.
Instead, I started putting people through processes where they had to figure out some fundamental ideas of what happens in a lesson, like how do I take hold of someone, and what moves next, and what's the relationship to the ground, and what am I listening for?
Mm.
And I did, and if I did demonstrate something, I had everyone else do it first and then show me what they came up with. So then if I did demonstrate something, they could work off their own reference to see how different it was and so on. So I did that for 2 years,
Mm.
and I had a training in Australia at the time. And after 2 years, I started seriously demonstrating stuff, and it was a disaster. I thought, oh my God, I've wasted 2 years. This isn't working.
Mm.
And one of my assistants, who's now a trainer, Stephanie Spink, she kept saying, wait, wait, be patient. And after about 3 days,
Yeah.
it kicked in. And I realized that people need to be put into situations where they can own their understanding and make sense out of it. And then they can be shown things. That's a whole different foundation of understanding that people can have to become more confident.
Yeah.
And then there can be other levels of confidence. So one way of increasing someone's confidence or ability to trust or feel the skill that they can do this is to give them an appropriate level of challenge. For example, in my training and some others I know too, in the third year of the training, the students are invited, asked to work with the public.
Yeah.
And they're not getting feedback, they're giving a lesson. Now, why do I say that? Why do I think that's even appropriate? Well, so in my training, Moshe didn't teach functional integration for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to handle a group of 220 people to do that, and he didn't use his assistants well in that regard. And so I really didn't start learning hands-on work till the third year. But I realized now, not just in my programs, but any program I teach in, at the end of the second year, people are at a higher level than I was when I graduated. So isn't that good enough, right? That's the place to start. The real learning is going to happen through the people you work with. And
Sure.
all the things you learn in a training are the things that you can bring to that process. And so if they're ready to practice after the second year, really, after the third year, it makes sense to push them a little bit.
Right.
And so those are some of the things that I think help people achieve a level of not just confidence, of self-worth
Hmm.
about I can do this, it's more than I want to do this. That
Mm.
needs to be there. I want to do this,
Yeah.
but now I can do this. So I think
Yeah.
that's a lot.
I think that that actually perfectly sums up the training process. So obviously you would initially need like want to do that, you would want to engage in a 4-year training, be committed or passionate enough about the Feldenkrais method where you have that desire, like I'm looking at the trainings that are available, or I've enjoyed ATM practice or had, life-changing
Mhm.
functional awareness lessons to
Right.
the point where it's like this method has caught my attention, it's piqued my interest, and I want to train in it.
Yeah.
Past that point is the process of learning how to do it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that, kind of some of the stuff that you just clarified, like one of those processes is learning awareness through movement. And learning awareness through movement, the way I understand it, part of that is that you need experience doing it. You need to be in lessons. You need to have kind of, for want of a better word, immersed yourself in that process of an
Hmm.
awareness through movement lesson. The structure itself, as you say, is often provided.
Hmm.
We have a format to follow in terms of Moshe's lessons or other trainers that have written different lessons.
Hmm.
But the movement from kind of competence into confidence with awareness through movement teaching, the way I would understand it would be one of self-immersion. You need to
Well, yeah,
go
I
ahead.
I would say two things.
Yeah.
I, th- Again, that's been the more traditional way of
Hmm.
awareness through movement, where you do a tremendous amount of awareness through movement,
Yeah.
really immersed in it, and then you go out. And maybe in a training, I did this for years too. We'd spend a few hours talking about strategies, and we'd say, okay, now go teach.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, that's the equivalent of going to a lot of restaurants and then someone saying to you, now go cook a meal. So they're not really the same thing, right?
Okay.
When you said the idea of becoming competent, to
Mm.
me, the dividing line between wanting to be competent and feeling competent is practice.
Yeah.
It's only in doing it. So, like for me, and Moshe started not a lot, a number of talks,
Mm.
and now I'm going to explain functional integration. And he would boom, 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 wander all over the place, and at the end go, now that's functional integration. And it'd be like, huh? It
Mm.
wasn't that clear. But he never explained awareness through movement.
Right.
And this is something I've made a personal study of to understand what is awareness through movement. Can we understand the structure?
Mm.
To what end? Well, if you look at Moshe's history, he never taught the same ATM the same way twice.
Yeah.
He's always adapting it, changing it, working it in some way like that.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we take awareness and movement lessons from Moshe, myself, other people,
Mm.
and we fix them. And they need to be fixed to some degree because in the beginning, someone doesn't know why a movement is done that way or what I might take out or add in or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But my goal, ideally, for people is that not at the end of a 4-year training, but after that and maybe 5 years of a lot of practice, that they can start inventing their own awareness and movement lessons.
Mm.
But to do that, we need to understand the structure. We need to understand. And I've asked everyone senior to me in the work, did Moshe ever explain ATM? And no, never. And so I've made a study of it. And we have the resource of the Alexandria Nye lessons,
Yeah.
the early lessons that Moshe taught in Israel. And there you can really watch his development in some areas.
Hmm.
Even for me, some of those lessons, either I just completely don't understand them, or they don't seem like they're lessons to me.
Right.
They were experiments. And he was continually experimenting things like that
Hmm.
to become a competent, confident, and ATM teacher, one that over time understands it enough, not so they make up a lesson, but so that they know how to adapt the lesson for the person in class
Sure.
who can't do it for some reason.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just read the script and it's like, oh, I don't know, just keep going. So
Yeah.
this is, I think, another development in our work and our understanding that makes a big difference for people.
Yeah. I mean, in my own experience, in encountering people, they never conform to the structure of the lesson in exactly the way that you're teaching it. People have
Right,
pain issues.
right.
You have to navigate that, If you don't,
Yeah,
you're not really teaching the method in the way that it was designed to be taught. So
right. Yeah.
yeah. So would you mind then, I mean, you said you've spent a lot of time thinking about what constitutes an ATM
Hmm.
in its kind of in its format. I
Hmm.
wonder if you could give people a sense of what on a training, what you would learn, how you would learn to understand awareness through movement that would be different from just experiencing it in a public class.
Sure. So I would say, in a public class, I'm just even now, if I lie down and do a lesson that I haven't done,
Mm,
I'm immersed in the sensory experience of the lesson.
yeah.
It's not a thoughtful cognitive experience for me.
Hmm.
And actually, if I start to think about it when I'm doing the lesson, I leave the lesson.
Yeah.
It's more fruitful for me to stay in the sensory experience of doing it.
Mm,
One of the first things I'll do is I'll take people through a series of lessons that they've done before. So they have a little distance from it, so they can take a step back, make some observations, bring it into language in some way like that.
yeah.
Another thing, here's I mean, the public can hear this. It doesn't matter because when we're in the experience, we don't remember these things.
Mm,
So, people often have the experience of something magical happening in awareness through movement lesson. I still
yeah.
do too, thank goodness, because if I didn't, it'd be pretty boring.
Yeah.
Magical experience is like, how did that happen?
Mm,
What did I do? And you can't think it through. You can't figure out what you did different. So there are a few things that I think really speak to that. One thing is the difference in understanding the movement instruction. Let's say I'm bringing my elbow and my knee towards each other. That's the instruction.
mm,
That's different than where the movement actually happens. The
sure.
movement happens in my trunk that I fold, that I bend like that.
Yeah.
That understanding of that is already a clue in terms of understanding what the lesson might possibly be about. And
Yeah.
I say might possibly because a lesson can be about many different things for different, you can have a group of 20 people and you can have 18 different experiences as a result of
Yeah.
that because of how they started.
Mm,
And that thinking of what a lesson is about is something that can happen on a mechanical level. So
mm,
what I just described was a folding of flexion. And
sure.
so that's something mechanical that's going to be appreciable, hopefully, to everyone in the training.
Yeah.
But then an awareness and movement lesson also brings about a deeply personal experience.
Hmm.
But when I ask trainees in a training, what is the lesson about? I tell them first, let's look at what's your personal experience.
Yeah.
We can have a group of 5 people describing completely different things, but
Sure.
then we can also look at the mechanical aspect.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
Mm,
Then we can look at some of the strategies of how does a movement improve in ways that we don't expect it. So if I do this movement and I'm lying on my back, and then I do it on my side, and
yeah.
then I come back to my back again, it's often different.
Mm,
It's the change in orientation, both in relation to gravity and relationship to how I use the ground and relationship to how I can engage myself in that different position,
yeah.
changes how I bring myself to it.
Yeah.
So things like this. And then of course, there's things like where our attention is directed, which that redirection of attention changes something in terms of what someone experiences. But these things I would rarely explain
During a lesson.
in a lesson.
Yeah.
Maybe in a conversation after a lesson, I
Sure.
might talk about these things, but during it, it again, it takes us out of the sensory experience. It's not so
Yeah.
useful at that point.
Yeah, I think that, what's useful in you explaining it is it gives people that are interested in taking the method further the opportunity to see the depth of the method in
Yeah,
terms of how understanding what is happening kind of,
yeah,
underneath the lesson.
yeah,
How an individual lesson might have that magical uh
right.
result that becomes obvious to you as a practitioner who's experienced it and seen it and taught it many times. But to the person that's in the lesson for the first time, they've got no idea why they feel, they're
Yeah,
whatever it is, right?
yeah.
Okay, so
The other thing about that is, and this is important, is that going through a training and gaining the understanding of more of what's actually going on, whether it's an awareness through movement or functional integration lesson, like I said before, it doesn't eliminate the joy and discovery that happens when you do a lesson.
yeah,
I'll tell you a funny story. I had a lesson, one other training in Australia, where there was a movement in the lesson that we kept returning to, and one woman wasn't getting it.
yeah,
And so, of course, the first strategy is you say it louder. No, that never works, right? Or you say it again, it doesn't work. And then you start saying it in different ways. So I may have said it 3 or 4 different ways, and she didn't get it.
yeah,
And I'm going on with the lesson, and again, with the same movement, and now I try to introduce it in 3 or 4 new ways, and she doesn't get it. By the end of the lesson, I must have said it 14 different ways. And then at the end of the lesson, this person comes up to me and goes, "Who the hell wasn't getting it?" And I went, "You." She said, "Me." I said, "Lie down." So there's a good example of another aspect of teaching, which is both to have the patience to allow someone not to understand something,
mm,
not to feel they have to get it. Because in this case, for that person, this idea, this movement was not in their self-image.
yeah,
Once I went over it with them personally, it made perfect sense to them,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it's another part of it, being able to be a teacher is allowing people to learn at their own pace.
yeah.
And that's not so easy. That's harder to learn. Yeah.
And I guess sort of alongside that, there's like an observational skill
Yeah.
where you're able to see when someone because ATM process, you're giving instructions. Unless you understand the material to a certain level, you can't really understand if someone isn't doing your instruction, perhaps why not? You know,
Yeah.
like
Right.
what's the thing that's holding them up
Right.
that would change your next instruction,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. And the
Uh,
only thing you have to become quickly skilled at observing is when is someone going too far? When might they hurt themselves? Which is
yeah.
very rare, but we have to watch that, you
Mm,
know. That takes care of itself usually as well.
yeah. So then so aside from awareness through movement, there's obviously the functional integration part of the Feldenkrais method that people are trained on throughout a professional training. So I wonder if maybe you could talk a little bit about that process. Is there any expectation that people should have experienced that when they come into a training, should have any skills when it comes to working with people or touch? Or
Mm,
yeah, so
yeah.
I'll pass that
So
over to you.
so I think it's part of the accreditation policy that someone is supposed to have experience in the method. Now, I've had it in a number of trainings, especially like one in Colombia, where I had people from 10 countries. Most of them in the countries they came from, there were no practitioners.
Mm,
And at that point, already there were things online, so they could learn some stuff online, but they hadn't had a functional integration lesson.
yeah,
So I'm not such a big believer that they have to have had that experience. For me, I had had 3 functional integration lessons, one when I had pain, and the other two because I was just so puzzled by it, I kept coming back.
yeah,
When I was an actor, my acting teacher had done awareness and movement with me, but it made no sense to me at all.
mm,
So I'm more inclined, personally at least, to say, if you're interested in this, let's try it. Let's see what happens. And it's always been successful for me. I've
yeah,
never had someone come with a lack of experience who feels like, oh, I was wrong.
mm,
Now, on the other hand, if you talk about someone who has experience in touch, that can be extremely beneficial and it can be a big interference. Because if someone is studied to be a physiotherapist or a massage therapist, they could be really skilled at what we're doing, but the quality of touch and the things we're listening for and how we're touching someone is
mm,
completely, really different, like
yeah,
really different. And many of them say, if they're still doing their practice during a training, there's always this crossroad they get to where it's like, I can't do my massage like I used to because I keep looking for the skeleton and I don't know what I'm doing now. And I said, yeah, I understand that. And the best thing to do when you give a massage.
Mm.
Notice when you're drawn to other things, but don't act on it.
Yeah.
And then practice Feldenkrais is a separate thing, but don't throw away what you know.
Yeah.
You can't eliminate that. You want to utilize that. Just like Moshe utilized everything. He was like a sponge. Any kind of new thing, any other method, he would investigate it, try to understand it, and then apply it through this Feldenkraisian way of thinking, which changes it. So it may look the same as something else, but the attitude and the way you go about pursuing it, that can be a different thing as well, you know. So the background, people come from being a home person, taking care of kids, to being, doctors who have experience in all this kind of stuff. Like many doctors I've worked with, the ones who have a really good understanding of anatomy or orthopedists,
Yeah.
they do, because they're inside people.
Mm.
I've had a lot of doctors come for lessons who they touch oh, I put my hand on my hips and I go, well, that's your hip is actually, well, there's the hip bone, there's the hip joint, there are different things, but the personal understanding of something is not the same thing.
Mm.
And then this is probably one of the, I think, most significant things about taking a training in the Feldenkrais method is the personal and the professional. So the professional part, as we've talked a bunch here, is to bring someone to a level of competency and
Mhm.
competence where they can practice with people, find out each time more about the method until eventually they feel, I can do this more and more.
Yeah.
And there's the personal aspect of it. And
Mhm.
the personal aspect of it, traditionally in training programs, many people came, and still today, but many people came personally. They just wanted to do more awareness and movement. They were interested in functional integration.
Yeah.
I know I've talked to colleagues who they don't want people there personally anymore. They want them all professional. Okay, I can go get behind that too, but I've had too many people who were there personally who then benefited so much that now they practice,
Yeah.
that they found that changed. But the personal benefits,
Mm.
that's significant. Now, if I can talk about something personal to me
Please
for a
do.
moment, because for me, if I look at the foundation of all my trainings, of all my workshops with the public, of all my interactions with people individually,
Mm.
I come back to a workshop I created years ago about self-image. And as I was investigating self-image, I started to think our self-image is a reflection of how much we like ourselves or how much we don't like ourselves. So
Mhm.
if I like myself, I have a good self-image. If I don't, not such a great self-image.
Mm.
And then after some time with this, I started thinking that this is my job to help people like themselves more. And of course, I do it through the Feldenkrais method.
Mm.
It's interesting, like in awareness through movement, there's a very concrete way we can explore that, which has to do with moving in a way that you like the way it feels.
Yeah.
And if you think about whether you're doing a Feldenkrais training or learning to play an instrument or practicing a sport or learning to draw, almost all of those things have a deeper motivation that if I succeed at that, if I get better at that, I'll feel better. Oh, excuse, someone's at my door.
Oh, sure. Wait.
1 second, okay?
Yeah.
So, in terms of liking ourselves more, as I was saying, that it's one of the things that motivates us to do most of the things we do. And I think that if I become a successful Feldenkrais practitioner, I
Mhm.
like myself more. And this is something that we can feed, and probably the best example of this that I ever had was in another training in Australia where I was graduating people and I'd call them up, give them their certificate, give them a hug. And so many people whispered in my ear, I like myself more. So that's the personal level.
Yeah.
But now, if we go back to the professional level,
Mhm.
what does it mean to be a Feldenkrais practitioner?
Yeah.
It means that you've learned how to create the circumstances whereby someone could learn to do something that they couldn't do before, or they can improve the quality of what they're doing in a way that they couldn't access it themselves before.
Yeah.
I mean, really what we're doing is thinking systemically in terms of where do they work too much, where do they work too little, and how can they learn to navigate that to become better at what they want to be able to do.
Mm. And I guess that there's a crossover in between those two processes because, as you're saying, that as a practitioner that goes through a training, there is your own personal process that you go through. At the same time, you're learning the skills or you're becoming more competent yourself in
Mhm.
terms of helping other people go through their own personal journey. So if
Mhm.
someone comes to you for an ATM class or comes to you for a functional integration lesson, their own experience is deeply personal.
Always, yeah.
The sense of improvement they gain, along the lines that you're talking about in terms of liking themselves more, is their own personal journey. So, in some way, as a practitioner, you take yourself through that process in a training, but then you get the skills and the tools to be able to help other people through that process. Is that
Yeah.
a good
And
way of
Moshe
saying
said very clearly, oh no, I think it's completely accurate what you're saying. That's great.
it?
And Moshe was very clear. He said, if it isn't personal, it's not worth anything.
Mm,
Now, that's a pretty strong statement, but certainly in our work, that's true.
yeah.
Now, you can look at the personal part and how it is necessary for the professional part. So why do we do so much awareness through movement? Well, awareness through movement in it has an embedded sense of pattern. So we're understanding the systemic way of thinking that I just mentioned without understanding systems thinking,
Mm,
meaning feeling it, we're learning it that way. But
yeah.
then another level too. So in our work, we talk a lot about the practitioner, how they use themselves, how they organize themselves. Well,
Sure.
to what end?
Mm,
Well, it's not to become more objective. It's actually to become more subjective, meaning that when I touch someone and I go to move them and it feels like they don't move, I have to ask the question, are they not moving because that's their habit and what they do? Or are they not moving because how I use myself? And so by doing so much awareness through movement, we get to know ourselves in a deeper way
yeah.
so that we do interact with another person. I can more subjectively differentiate what's me and what's them
Mm,
and take them now. It doesn't mean I can't know every aspect of myself. I'm still learning a lot about myself,
sure. Yeah.
luckily.
Yeah.
But if I know more and more of that,
Mm,
then I can start to help the person more clearly.
yeah.
So if someone doesn't move, I can say, oh, wait a minute, maybe it's me. And I can adjust myself and then feel, oh, it was me.
Mm,
Or I adjust myself and I go, no, it's not me.
mm,
This is something that we work with together, me and the person who's on the table or sitting in front of me,
yeah.
that the both of us are in the process of feeling ourselves to bring about a better organization for the person who's coming for the lesson.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why they're called lessons too. So it's not a treatment, right? Well, of course, it's a treatment, a session, you can name it whatever you want,
Yeah.
but the idea of learning puts it in a different framework, a different context of understanding than
Yeah.
just doing something to someone. We're always doing something with someone.
Yeah. 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 No, I think that's a nice way of um, helping people understand perhaps what's unique about functional
Mhm.
integration is
Yeah,
that as Feldenkrais practitioners, there is we're developing a sensitivity to ourselves, which
Mhm.
lends itself very well to coming into contact and helping other people.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So kind of moving on then to the kind of more practical aspects of a training. Obviously, it's a 4-year training, and you're learning you're learning throughout that 4 years. But is there a moment in that 4-year training where you are qualified to teach ATM, for example, or is there any kind of like nuance to the training process that gives people the ability to start using it during a training?
Well, you also have to remember that all trainings are a little different.
Sure.
So I'm talking more from the point of view of my programs.
Yeah.
I know other people whose programs I teach in, how they're similar, how they're different in some ways.
For sure.
Now, for me, like I know some people who don't want people touching people till the third year because that's what Moshe did with us in Amherst.
Yeah.
That wasn't because he decided we weren't ready, it's because he didn't know how to teach us,
Yeah.
right? And awareness through movement, I quickly encourage people to start teaching right away with their families and friends.
Yeah.
Because as I said, the more they practice, the better their questions are going to be when they come back.
Yeah.
So someone can practice awareness through movement, but after the second year of a 4-year training, they're
Mhm.
qualified as student, they're authorized as student teachers of awareness through movement, which is when they can start charging money.
Yeah.
So that's a benefit there that someone can do that.
Yeah.
I start teaching functional integration in the first week of the training.
Hmm.
It's not an FI, but they're learning quality of touch, of how to use themselves, of what kind of things they can think about and where they can put their attention to.
Yeah.
And that's something I want them to start doing sooner and sooner and sooner,
Sure.
because the more time you practice it, the better you're going to be. And
Yeah.
I do need to say one thing about competency.
Mm.
So that's a word that I use a lot, we all use a lot. There's a very academic but interesting article called The Current Relevance of Merleau-Ponty's Phenomenology of Embodiment. You with me still? Yeah.
I am. I am.
Yeah. And in it, I mean, there's a lot of jargon and stuff in it. It's a long article, but in it, he describes 5 stages of learning, from novice to advanced beginner to competent to proficient to expertise.
Hmm.
And I'll paraphrase it here, but what he talks about in the competent learner, he says at this point, the learner sees so many possible permutations of what could happen in a real life situation that they become completely overwhelmed and wonder how anybody could ever learn this. That's competent.
Mm.
That's not usually our definition of competency. But in fact, I think it's an accurate description of competency because you can see the different possibilities that exist. You may not know yet what to do, but you're good enough that you can see them and maybe start to choose one or the other and again, learn how to move forward from there.
Yeah.
So when I talk about competency, most people think about proficiency, that, oh, I'm getting pretty good at this.
Yeah.
Now, the expert doesn't even have to think about it, right? Right. But a competent person is one who knows enough and can pursue it. That's a level of confidence where they go, I don't understand it, but I'm going to keep doing this because sometimes I have a better result than others,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. 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 No, I like that definition. I think my experience myself, obviously, I was in a training with 60 other people, and people kind of came out of that training with different degrees of feeling competence. You
Right.
know, some had been exposed to the method for a long time before they did a training, some were more new, some had different experience in terms of movement, like dance, or, everyone kind of comes at it in a different way and ends up in a slightly different place. So,
Yeah.
I think it's nice to know that there's room for everyone to gain their own competence at the end of the training. And then there's what was the proficiency and expertise
That's
come,
later.
yeah, they come later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So I mean, I feel like we've covered quite a lot in terms of what people would expect with the training. Is there anything that kind of comes to mind for you that you feel is an important message for anyone that would like to engage in a training?
I can say that one thing that I've heard many, many times from people in trainings
Mm,
is that at some point in the training, they come up and they go, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And they're all happy for it, though.
yeah.
So that's something that's a great value for them.
Mm,
And as I said earlier, the initial thing is the want. If you want to do it, then it's worth pursuing.
yeah.
Now, but then there needs to be a level of responsibility on the individual who wants to do it to how can I make this happen? So part of my job as an educational director
Yeah.
is to help people figure out what they need to do to become successful at it.
Yeah.
If I say to someone, why don't you give 3 lessons a week to practice? Oh, yeah, I'm going to do that, but I can't find people. Okay, let's talk about how you can find people,
Mm,
right? Let's look at the different ways that you can accomplish what you want so that we all put these injunctions in front of ourselves that stop us from doing something. And really, the work is about possibility. So if it's something that you want to do, let's see how we can make it more possible for you to do it.
And do you have, I mean, so you said, you mentioned earlier that you have four trainings currently running. Do you have any trainings coming up
Yeah.
that you want people to know about?
I have one new one coming up in end of March, April of 2026 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And the website for that is feldenkrais.com, and they can find that out. And even, can I mention my other websites?
Please do,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So another website I have is called uncommonsensing.com, and that's my more personal Feldenkrais website. But there, if you're not interested in doing a training, there's lots of resources there, and I have about 23 different audio recordings of workshops that people might be interested in. Lots of articles I've written to there as well.
Hmm.
And I'm going to go ahead without asking you, but I'm going to plug my book too.
Please do. Please do.
I have two books. One is called Creating Creativity, Embodying the Creative Process. They're both on Amazon.
Mm.
And the other one is called Practice Intentional Acts of Kindness and Like Yourself More. It, and it's really a Feldenkrais-based workbook about how do we like ourselves more? How do we become who we want to be more and more?
Nice. It sounds like a perfect thing for someone that wants to get involved in the method to have as like you say, a workbook as
Yeah,
they maybe engage in a training.
sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. We will link to the training, your website, and your book if people want to access those. Um, Obviously, it's apparent through the interview, but Alan is a very experienced practitioner and, very accomplished in his presentation of the method. So,
Thank
I
you.
really encourage anyone out there that wants to study with Alan to make contact or to go to his website.
And I can just, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me and
Very welcome.
questions you asked me. I've enjoyed the conversation. And if someone does contact me, let's say through one of my websites, if you don't get an answer from me within 3 days, I didn't get it.
Okay.
So write me again.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well,
Good.
thank you so much, Alan, for coming on. It's been a
Thanks.
pleasure.
Okay. Bye bye.